All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the 9th part of the prep course walkthrough series for Origin Code Academy. We are just on level 5 exercises out of 6. So today we might wrap up all of the prep course. Actually, oh, cool. Hey, Christopher. Thanks for coming in. And yeah, I just turned the mic on there. And we're just getting started with jQuery effects and animation. So this is where we kind of make HTML elements move around on the page, fade in, fade out, slide around, and then the real fun stuff and the more complex animations come from Animate. And so there's no written lesson for this effects and animation lesson. However, we can always refer to the jQuery documentation. Effects and animation. So let's see what happens when we search for that. We'll go straight to the jQuery API docs, and you can see there's a lot of different methods that we can use to animate different HTML elements. And today we'll just be dealing with a select couple of them. So I think we'll just probably dive right into the exercises, and then as we get to them, we can discuss them in depth. So yeah, let's move right into the exercises, and let's see what the first one is asking us to do. So looks like in our index.html we have 3 divs with the class name of box, and looks like one is already hidden by default using the style tag, and then the other 2 are just empty divs, and they have no attributes other than the class name of box. So first it's asking us to hide the first box using jQuery. All right. So our box is our first element within the body. So there's a couple ways we could select using jQuery, different selectors. But first, one way we could select the body, children of the body, and then we could say div, and we could say the first child of the body. So nth child, or actually we could just say div first. Dot hide. Div first hide. Let's see if that gets us past the first test. Okay, so we were able to hide the first one using the first child selector. Let's see if we can hide another, or let's see if we can show the second box using jQuery. So we'll use similar syntax and select the second child div of the body, which should be our div that's hidden or has a display of none. So we can see, let's see. Oh yeah. So before, if we comment out this code, you can see that we have 2 boxes. However, one of them is hidden. So that's why we can't see this middle div box here. However, the other 2 are visible, and the other 2 are visible, and they have some color to them based according to our CSS style rules here. And so our first one is red. Yes. Extra points for you, Christopher, if you use the first child selector. It's advanced. Okay, so we uncomment this code, and then we should see the first box is red, so we should see the red box disappear. If we hit test, so the red box disappears. Now let's show the second box, and we should see a green box appear. Using the div, let's go nth child, and we'll say 2, or the second child. And we'll just use the show method. See if that one wants to work. No, so maybe I got this wrong. Maybe it's index based. It did not. Let's see, nth child 1, div, nth child. Div, nth child 1, box. Nth child. So it is the index. However, let's see. It's not liking this syntax. That's not quite what we want. Index even odd equation. Nth child even. Let's try that. Okay. There we go. That was one way to do it. So a little backwards there. I'm not sure why the nth child taking the index of 1, because our first child should be index 0, our second child should be index 1, third child should be index 2. However, this doesn't appear to be working, but when I try to select the odd indexed children, then I'm able to show the green box. So that should satisfy the second exit criteria. The cool thing about jQuery is there's lots of ways to select or do the same things, multiple different syntaxes to do the same thing. So after showing the second box, we should toggle the visibility of the third box every 1,000 milliseconds using the setIntegral function. So I believe there's a jQuery method. If we look back in the documentation, I think it's called toggle show. So .toggle should, if it's shown, then it should hide it. Otherwise, if it's hidden, then it should show it. So whatever it is currently, whatever state it is currently, it should flip it using the .toggle method. So we will use another method, which you may be familiar with, but the setIntegral method is native to JavaScript. The native method that you can run some function every so often. So you specify, here we specify the function that we want to run, and then after that, you tell it how many milliseconds you want it to repeat. So every 2,000 milliseconds, I want you to run this function again, or I want you to do some bit of code every 2,000 milliseconds or 2 seconds. Here it says actually 1,000 milliseconds in our exit criteria. So in that case, we'll just select Hopefully this works, but we'll try the last child this time. So div last, and we're going to toggle it every 1 second. So let's check this out. We hit test. Now we can't really see it. So let's make it maybe every 2 seconds. Huh. Yeah, you can see it kind of blinking here, but it's going pretty quickly. So that's how you use the set interval, and that's also how you show and hide elements using jQuery. So as opposed to hard coding something straight into the HTML or always hiding something using CSS, you can use JavaScript to manipulate the visibility of your elements. So it's pretty handy. Let's move on and see what the second exercise is going to have us do. So this one's about sliding. We'll go ahead and pull up the slide method from jQuery, just so we have that documentation already up. Down, up, and toggle. So it looks similar to our show, hide, and toggle. Looks like we have an option to toggle whether it's already shown or hidden. The toggle method will already recognize that. So let's see what we got going on here. If we just hit test to render our HTML, it looks like nothing is showing up at the moment. So let's see what we have to do to make it happen. Looks like all of our divs, excluding our game wrapper, are hidden. So there's none. Oh yeah. So this one should have a nice surprise to it. So let's take a look at this first one. After 0 milliseconds, so we don't need to set a timeout or an interval or anything. We can make the section with an ID of game scene slide down using the slide down function in jQuery. So we know it has an ID of game scene. We can go ahead and select that by ID. So we'll go ID game scene. And we will go ahead and slide that one down. So we select it using the ID selector and chain the slide down method to the selector. And now we see it slide down immediately. Now we have our game scene div. So looking good as far as the first test. So now, after 1,000 milliseconds, remember we use the set timeout or set interval to make something happen after. Yeah, after a certain amount of time. So we will start with a set timeout function, which takes the anonymous function followed by the length of time that you want to wait. So in this case, we'll go 1,000 milliseconds. And then we're going to make the divs with ID player 1 and player 2 slide down. So we have a player 1 and player 2, both with the IDs that we can select by. So we can do it a couple ways. First, we can select it one at a time using just the IDs. So player 1 dot slide down. And then also, if we copy that line and just change the player to player 2, that should work. However, since both of these divs are nested within our game scene, we could just say, so let's see if that works. Looks like we have some players now. However, didn't like that. There we go. Okay, so I think it does want us to select. Maybe we can select all the children of the game scene. Or all the divs that are within the game scene. We could also use the multiple ID selector. So perhaps we should say player 1, comma, perhaps that's what they're looking for? So they all seem to be working. So our players are all coming in. However, it's not like in our, did we do our set timeout correctly? It looks like we did. Well, let's continue on and maybe the, I use single quotes, are you sure? It didn't seem to, Well, let's continue with the rest of the exit criteria for now. Player 1 and player 2, maybe it wants this div. Huh. Well, we will definitely figure that one out in just a second. But for now, let's go. Maybe it doesn't like the arrow function. Not liking any of this over here. Let's take a look at the test. Player 1, player 2. Well, let's continue on and see if the issue remains with these other ones. I'm hoping that we'll be able to see timeout number. Yeah, I believe that I've got this correct. So I think there's another jQuery method. Delay. Okay. Oh man. There we go. Thanks, Chris. So we wanted us to use the delay method by jQuery, which just delays whatever method that you're invoking, however many milliseconds you want to delay, to be delayed. So, all right, so that satisfies the second test. We're passing 2 out of 2, so 2 out of 4, so we have 2 more to go. After 1500 milliseconds, so we'll be using our delay method again. We'll make these divs just go ahead and slide up. So copy that whole line, and then instead of down, we'll have them slide up, and we'll have it wait 1500 milliseconds, or like a second and a half. So it's very quick, but here they go. Yep. They're sliding down, and then sliding up. So that's kind of cool. We only have one more test to pass, and that looks like after 3000 milliseconds, we'll make the game scene element slide up. So again, we will select the game scene, and we will slide it up, but only after a delay of 3000 milliseconds, or 3 seconds. And test that guy out. Oh yeah, it wants us to toggle that guy instead of just sliding him up. So now we should be passing all of our exit criteria, and take a look at that. It all seems to be disappearing very quickly. Let's go 30 seconds instead. Okay, cool. So I think we made it past the sliding. Ajax is not quite coming up. I think we're going to wait until next week to dive into Ajax. And today we will just get through the last effects, which is fading. So we'll finish up fading today. That'll get us past level 5. And then next week, we'll bite off the last big chunk, and we'll hit this jQuery Ajax pretty hard. And we'll go through, I think, 3 exercises that are all fairly complicated. They usually take our students the longest to complete. As you can see, Christopher is talking about AJ, who's a student with us, and he's getting stuck. during this one. So he had some problems with the Ajax. It can be tricky, but once you get it, it can be also very useful for making a request from your web page to another web page, and usually getting some sort of data from the other web page, bringing it back to your own website, transforming or manipulating that data, and then redisplaying it or displaying it back on your own website. So Ajax, there's a lot of other libraries out there nowadays, especially if you're using like React or a more modern framework. But Jquery, according to a statistic that we just looked up the other day, makes up about 90% of the websites out there today. The leading websites all use Jquery. So it's going to be a while before we see that disappear. You're going to want to know what Jquery is, and you're going to want to be familiar with the syntax. And so, yeah, next week we'll dive into Ajax calls, get JSON, and other. I think there's one more method that we'll dive into. So let's finish up this fading exercises, and then we'll wrap it up for today, and then we will we'll finish up the whole prep course next week. So you still have time between now and then to sign up and catch up with us if you have not. The website is prep.origincodecademy.com/prep course sign up. And once you head to that webpage, then there'll be a form. Just fill this form out, and once you hit sign up, you're in. You're already in, and you can get started right away. And try to catch up to us by next week. So we're finishing up. Right now, we're finishing up fading exercises. So let's see what this exercise is asking us to do. First, it says to fade in all squares using Jquery. So let's take a look and see what we got here. Looks like we have 3 sections, each with a different ID. And each contains 3 divs, and some of those are squares, some of those are circles. Okay, so it looks like they're denoting a square by the class name as well as a circle. So first, if we fade in all squares using Jquery, the best way we could select all squares would be to use the class selector or the period and just say anything with the class name of square, we want to chain the fade in method, which will should cause them to fade in. So before we actually do that, let's hit test, and you can see that nothing is rendered in our mini output here. So if we uncomment out our line now and hit test, now we can see that all the squares were rendered. That's good. Now we've faded in all of these squares. And second, we need to fade in all the circles. So it's going to look very similar. They either have the class circle or square. In this case, we'll select the ones with the class of circle. All right, let's check that guy out. All right, so now we have all of our squares as well as all of our circles. All right. Next, fade all shapes to an opacity of half or 0.5 using the .fade2 function in Jquery. So let's check out the fade2 method from Jquery. Not Jquery, just Jquery. We'll go to fade2. And it looks like this just takes a duration as well as an opacity. So duration is going to be a number or a string, and then the opacity. Okay. So in our exit criteria, it doesn't give us a duration. So we'll leave that first parameter blank, I would say. So if we want to select all shapes, it looks like all of our shapes are divs. And that's the only other div on the page is a shape, so we won't have to worry about selecting too many elements. So we'll just go ahead and use the selector for div. And we will fade to, we'll just give it an arbitrary 1,000 seconds or 1 second, 1,000 milliseconds or 1 second. And we'll fade it to an opacity of 0.5. Next, actually, let's check that out, see how that worked. Looks like all of our shapes are now at half opacity. I didn't seem to like that one. Okay. So instead of just selecting all divs, which is kind of a quick way to do it, it wants us to be more specific and select all squares and all circles. Okay, so now we are passing the third test as well. We could also change this to a 0 and have it fade to 0.5 opacity immediately. If we run test, now it happens kind of immediately. You can see down there. Whereas if we have it after, say, 2,000 milliseconds, so now they're solid and they're slowly fading. We can make that happen even over 5 seconds and see how slowly it will start fading. Yeah, nice and slow. Or immediate. Bam. Okay. So next we have fade all shapes to an opacity of 1 using the fade to function in jQuery. So now we're going to bring them, we're just going to copy this line. And instead of 0.5, we're going to bring them back to 1 or full opacity. So let's do this one after, let's make it last at least a second so we can see it fade out immediately and then fade back in. Yeah, cool. Kind of like a little pulsating effect there since the browser appears to be re-rendering many times. All right. And now let's just put in our viewer limbs answer, which is this, and see if it passes. So he's saying to select the div and set an interval of 1,000 seconds and fade toggle. Let's check that guy out. Yeah, I don't think that set interval is actually a method. However, I think everything else is correct. Wait a second. Yeah, so if we look up how to use if we look up set interval, it looks like set interval takes an anonymous function that runs some bit of code, and then it takes a duration, actually a time that it should wait before running whatever's inside of this anonymous function. So let's create the set interval outline, and then we'll fill it in with the correct data. So that was wrong. That was not right. So it's a function that takes an anonymous function and also a time. And then we should put this piece of code in there. So every 1,000 seconds, it should run this function that selects our divs and applies the fade toggle method to them. Let's test that guy out. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, cool. So we'll get a little celebration there, as well as our next button, and all of our tests are passing. So great job, guys. I think we just finished up level 5. Let's go ahead and hit next, and there we go. Now we can go on to the next lesson, which is Jquery and Ajax. So we'll stop here. We're getting close to the end of our session. So we'll wrap it up early and let you guys enjoy your Wednesday night. Yeah, next week we'll dive into Jquery and Ajax. There's a few lessons in the Scrimba video that we might check out. A few cool APIs that I like to demo, and some nice easy ones to work with. And if you haven't, you can always sign up for the prep work at this address, prep.origincodeacademy.com, and you can join us for the webinar next week. And if you are just joining us recently and you haven't quite gotten to the Ajax and the Jquery part yet, you can check out the other videos. If you go to YouTube and just do a general search for Origin Code Academy, and then you select our channel under playlists, you should find the OCA Prep Course Walkthrough series, and this contains all of the previous webinars that we've done, including all the lessons. Just like you saw today, we go over them together and make sure that you have a grasp of them. You can always ask questions in the webinar. Unfortunately, on YouTube, you can't ask questions because they're recorded. But you can always go back and watch as I go through the exercises. If you're stuck on a particular point, then that's a good resource for you as well. As always, thanks for joining me. My name is Christian with Origin Code Academy. So we hope to see you in the prep work, and hope to see you next Wednesday for Jquery and Ajax, and part 10, finishing up the prep course walkthrough. So thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next week. Have a great night.